Welcome everyone to the second round of the FIDE World Cup 2025. On your screen is WIM Afruza Khamdamova, and she is a very talented young player from Uzbekistan, and she's rated 2326 WIM, and she is taking on none other than India number 1 Koneru Humpy. The World Cup is currently happening in Batumi, Georgia, and all the top women players are playing there. And there you see Humpy enters. The players who are playing are Le Tingye, Zhu Jiner, Tanjongi, Humpy, Anna Muzichuk, Alexandra Goryachkina, and we had 9 Indians who participated in this, who have qualified. 8 of them have moved on to round number 2. Players like Humpy, Harika, Divya, Vaishali had a bye in round 1, and this is the first round in which they are playing. So this is Humpy's first game in Batumi, and she looks fully focused, determined, and a big game for her here and a big tournament for her. Afruza opens the game with 1 e4 and calmly presses the clock. What is Humpy's first move going to be? She responds with the super solid pawn to e5. The knight comes out to f3. And Humpy brings her knight out to c6. The Ruy Lopez is on the board, and Humpy has to decide whether she wants to go for the Berlin or the main line. She goes a6, the main line of this of the Ruy Lopez. She goes bishop to a4, pulling the bishop backwards. Knight to f6, and Afruza is a very talented young player because she's born in 2009, which means she's just 16 years of age, and definitely one of the big talents. And knight takes e4. We have the open Ruy Lopez on the board. She pushes her pawn to d4. And now pawn to b5 played. Bishop comes back to b3. And pawn to d5. So we are going into heavy mainline theory here in the open Ruy Lopez. There's pressure on the d5 pawn, and pawn takes. Now the d5 pawn is actually hanging. So bishop to e6 is a good move. The bishop comes out to e6. And Afruza plays her knight to d2. Now for Humpy, the question is whether she should just continue her development, bishop e7, bishop c5, or she goes for knight c5, which is also a very plausible move. And Afruza plays pawn to c3. Well, you can win the bishop here, but after knight takes b3, this is a nice position for white. So Humpy plays the main move here, pawn to d4. Afruza chops off the bishop. Bishop takes e6. You will see that Humpy is hardly used any time on the clock, while Afruza is at 1 over 16 minutes. Maybe she's just trying to recollect her opening prep. Here the main move is to take on d4. And after knight c d4, a4. And this has been played in many games. But she has started to think a bit, and she goes knight e4. Perhaps not the best move in the position. And she gets up here. Humpy comes back, and it will be a surprise for Humpy. I don't think she would have prepped for this one. She goes queen to d5, a very interesting move, hitting the knight in the center of the board. And now you can defend the knight with rook e1. That's what Afruza does. She plays her rook to e1. And Humpy simply long castles here. Wow. That's a bold, brave move. Afruza can go a4 and strike there, but instead she plays c takes d4. Humpy's long castling was quite a bold decision, I must say. Because now after knight takes, The king does look a bit weak, but what Humpy is essentially banking on is the fact that all her pieces are so well placed. And so she's saying to Afruza, you can't get much out of this position. Takes on d4. I believe you can take with the queen as well as the knight. Both moves are feasible. And she's thinking here. Takes, queen takes. Oh, she takes with the knight. Knight takes d4. The chess set, by the way, used at this tournament is slightly weird. You can see those knights having not the most common of designs. Now the e5 pawn is a bit weak. Like for example, if you go bishop e3, the knight is hanging on e4. So you can't do this stuff. Goes bishop g5, Afruza. She attacks the rook on d8. An important move here. Rook d7 is like the only move. Humpy finds it. And 1 hour 9 minutes for Humpy, 43 minutes for Afruza. She gets her knight back to c3, attacking the queen on d5. And now queen comes to c4. So some discovered attack from the rook to the queen can happen. Have to be very careful. Brings her rook to c1. Afruza is setting up some deadly discoveries herself. She's saying to Humpy, I don't think I'm afraid of what you're going to do here. Humpy goes bishop b4. So some pin here, some pin here, some pin here. Quite an intense position. Knight jumps to a4. Wow. So the knight jumps and attacks the queen. And now knight c2 is an interesting move here. But then queen takes c2 is possible. You exchange the queens, pick up the knight here. But Humpy goes knight e2 check. Also an interesting move here. Wow. And by the way, queen takes e2 taken because otherwise the rook was hanging. Also the queen was under attack. And now Humpy trades queens. And Afruza has managed to slightly outwit Humpy here and get a very, very comfortable position, because after b takes a4, Humpy's structure is broken. Goes a3, which is a fine move. Also possible was rook e4 to attack the bishop and the pawn. Bishop comes to c5. Now you can't pick up the bishop because of back rank mate. So king f1 or g3 makes a lot of sense. She does go g3. And now the bishop is hanging. The pawn on a4 is a weakness. Rook c4 attacking here. Humpy goes bishop d4. But what about rook c4 now? This looks super strong. But Afruza goes rook c6. And I'm not particularly a big fan of this move because of king b7. And what did she achieve? Like, this really helps Humpy, right? To get the king up. She kind of provoked king b7. And now comes back and attacks the bishop and the pawn. So the rook comes to e8. Humpy slowly and steadily getting all her pieces into the game. Can we snatch the pawn? No, she goes bishop f4. Defending this pawn on e5 because that pawn was under pressure. And Afruza is basically saying to Humpy that your pawn is hanging on a4. c5 played. She takes it. White is a pawn up, but has lost some bit of coordination, and f6 comes in, taking the pawn impossible. The rook is hanging, so e6 played. But to e6 we can go rook to e7. Yes, rook to e7 on the board. And now e6 pawn cannot be defended. The rook comes back, and I think a smart move because the rook on a4 wasn't doing much. Taking the pawn now, Humpy, rook takes rook takes rook, taken. And pawn to b4 pushed here. A very interesting move by Afruza. King comes to b6. Defending the pawn on c5. She takes here. And the position is evened out. Maybe very small edge for Humpy. Bishop e3, trading the bishops could be an idea. A4 could be an idea. But Afruza makes this huge mistake on move number 33. She had only 30 seconds left. And Humpy would surely be stunned, like, why is she giving me a free pawn here? Bishop takes a3. What's her idea? What's the point? She simply snatches this pawn. And I think it was just a blank out moment for Afruza, because this pawn is just huge. It's a huge pawn. She simply gave it up. A5 played. And now you can go check, but king comes up. Bishop c5, a4, a3. She moves up. King to b5. And now rook to h4 played. She pushes her pawn to a4. Rook check. We could even just block with the bishop. Yes, she gets her bishop back. A3, A2, A1 coming in. Rook takes h7 taken, but does this pawn matter? A3 played. Rook h8 wanting to get behind the pawn. Rook a6 by Humpy. A2, A1 is unstoppable here. And what a big turnaround in this game. Afruza resigns. Humpy scores her first win here. It's a 2-game mini match. So if she manages to draw next one, Humpy will go through to round number 3. Remember, at the FIDE World Cup, there are 3 spots to the candidates 2025. So it's a super important event. The top 3 finishers will make it to the candidates. For now, Humpy is one of the strong contenders for that spot, and she started off well. Afruza, a super talent there, did make a very basic error, but I'm sure that she has a long road ahead of her and will come with all her energy in round 2. A great start for Humpy, beating Afruza here, and we saw the game. But apart from Humpy, we also have other players in the fray. We have Harika, who was playing another Indian, Nandida, and their first game ended in a draw. We have Divya Deshmukh, who's playing here as well, and she managed to win her first game. We will just look at the scorecard in a bit. We also have Vaishali, who's playing here, and she managed to win her first game as well. That's her mother following all the action there. Maybe one of, and by the way, Vaishali was quite happy and pleased after the game. Maybe the biggest result for an Indian player on this day was Vantika beating the former women's world champion Anna Ushenina, and Vantika was super happy and pleased after her game. The hero of round 1, that was K. Priyanka, managed to keep her chances going by drawing her first game against Claudia Coulon. And this is, by the way, if you see the red markings where the Indians are, you have Humpy, who started off with a win against Khamdamova, Afruza. Then we have Nandida and Harika drawing their game. Then we have Vaishali beating Ulet Maleli Jade. We have Padmini Raut holding Alexandra Koschenyuk to a draw. And I think that one was a big result because Padmini is also playing someone who has achieved so much here. And by the way, I have a photo of Padmini here. There you can see her fighting really hard against Koschenyuk. And coming back here, we have Divya Deshmukh beating Kesaria Geladze. And we have on the right side Vantika winning her game against Anna Ushenina, while Priyanka K held Claudia Coulon to a draw. So very good day for Indian players. None of them actually lost. 8 of them are still in the fray. We are down to 64 players. And remember, top 3 get a spot in the candidates. So a lot to fight for, and we will be bringing you action in the coming days as well. Thank you. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.